The men and women stationed at al-Assad have played a vital role in the military defeat of ISIS in Iraq and in Syria. Because of these gains, our service members in Syria can now return home to their families.
Well, President Trump speaking during his surprise visit to Iraq yesterday, defending his decision to pull roughly 2,000 U.S. troops out of Syria. The president is taking some heat, though, from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, no doubt you've heard it, and facing a shakeup at the top of the Pentagon. So let's bring in retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, senior fellow and military analyst at Defense Priorities. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
It's my pleasure for being here. Thanks for having me.
So you served two times in Iraq and Afghanistan. What did this visit mean to the troops? Let's begin there.
Yeah, this means a lot, and it doesn't matter whether you're Republican, Democrat, whether you like the president, whether you don't. I can tell you from personal experience, when the commander-in-chief comes to visit you in the war zone, it's a big deal. Because you're the man who sent them there and who's keeping them there, and I think you have an obligation to go and visit them, and it means so much to the troops. As you can see in a lot of the video, where nothing but smiles on all the faces of all the troops, so it's a big deal.
It really was remarkable. Part of his time there, he spent about 3 hours there. He talked about Syria, and he defended his decision to pull troops out of there, some 2,000 troops. What did you think of what he had to say about that?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. In fact, I think it's a little late in coming. I wish when he made that statement back in Ohio in March of this year and talked about how he's going to get out of Syria soon, I wish he'd have acted on it then, because it is absolutely in our interest to have those troops come out, because one of the big misunderstandings that I think a lot of these both Republican and Democratic senators and other people who are naysayers don't understand is that those troops have not been doing anything for America's security while they've been there right now. So their absence is not going to cause any harm, because that's not the way we defend ourselves and prevent terrorist attacks in the United States. So he needed to pull them out. So it's a good move.
What about endangering our ally Israel? Because he did also defend that decision and say that, he just doesn't see that happening either.
Well, I can tell you for a fact that the greatest military power in the Middle East is Israel, and they are most clearly able to defend themselves, as we saw again just in your previous segment there, where you're talking about how they launched a missile into Syria to defend their interests, and they have never hesitated doing that. And that's one of the big reasons why you've never seen in recent days or recent years Syria or Iran or anybody else directly challenge Israel, because they always lose and they always respond heavily. So they can definitely defend themselves against any enemy over there.
I mentioned that you served twice in Afghanistan as well. He's also talking about a drawdown of troops there. What's your opinion of that?
Yeah, I've also been long advocating that it's time for that mission to come to an end, because we have 17 consecutive years of nothing but strategic failure, extraordinary numbers of casualties and men and women who have sacrificed their lives, and we will never ever win that militarily, because you can't win with military power what's a political and diplomatic problem at its heart. That needs to happen soon. John
Bolton was with him on this trip, but clearly not there. Secretary of Defense Mattis, who has stepped down, he'll be leaving sooner than expected, actually. But President Trump does not seem to be in a huge hurry to replace him. Who do you think should replace him, and what do you think about that situation?
Well, I think that that's something that needs to be addressed pretty quickly, and the person who needs to fill in that role, it needs to be somebody that, number one, recognizes President Trump's non-interventionist and realist foreign policy views. And is because that's what he ran on. That's what the people voted him into office for. And it doesn't look like Secretary Mattis was really along those lines, because he's kind of like the Washington establishment, thinks we need to keep troops everywhere forever. And so I think it's good to have it. And one particular person who might come to mind is Jim Webb, because he was both a Republican and a Democrat, and he would be easily confirmed, and he is definitely aligned with the president on those very subjects. Yeah,
you mentioned this is something that he ran on. It was, 6 months ago, back in the spring, where he said, this is going to happen. He's going to pull troops out of Syria specifically. But yet we have this shock now that he's done it. In terms of the timing and the way that it transpired, what do you think?
Yeah, one of the things that he said during his stay there in Iraq was that he gave his military officials who counseled him against leaving back in March, he said, I'll give you 6 months. And he said they asked for more time, and he said, nope, no more time. That's it. We're done. So I think that it's abrupt in our minds. I do think that it would have been a lot better if he had coordinated with some of our key allies and some of the key members of Congress before he did that. But be that as it may, the decision is still good.
Yeah, it's done. Seems to be done, and he doesn't seem to be going back on it. Colonel Davis, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your insight.
Always my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Have a good day.